You should be live.
Okay. So we're a little bit late working out some technical glitches, but let's call the council work session to order.
Thank you. If everybody could put their screen on mute, and I'll go over the work session items and consent agenda items. And then if you have any questions, just unmute yourself and ask the questions. That way we'll reduce the feedback. So for everyone watching at home, because of the COVID-19 crisis, we're meeting remotely via Cisco WebEx, and so that we're making sure that we're socially distant. We want to video televise the city council meeting. So I'll go over the consent agenda items first, and because Mayor Pro Tem Heffron has experience using the software for work, we've asked him to run the meeting tonight, but we do have all the council members present. So I will go over the consent agenda items, and then you can ask questions about those, and then we'll go right into the regular meeting. So there are 6 items on the consent agenda. The first 4 are minutes from previous meetings. So item 1 on the consent agenda is adoption of the regular meeting minutes from your March the 2nd city council meeting. Item 2 on the consent agenda is adoption of the special city council meeting minutes from March the 2nd. And that's when we started doing some interviews of citizen advisory board applicants prior to the regular meeting on March 2nd. Item 3 on the consent agenda is adoption of the city council retreat minutes. And this was that 3rd day retreat. So this was the March 7th session of the city council planning workshop. And item 4 on the consent agenda is the final set of minutes, and that is from your special meeting on March the 16th, which was our workshop that we held back on March the 16th, which was the last time that we actually met in person. Here's some feedback. Somebody. Can you mute yourself?
Oh, I did.
Okay, there you are. Thank you. So those first 4 items are minutes from previous meetings. Item 5 is a call from applications from NCDOT for a pedestrian master plan update. So there's a resolution of support for that application. As some of you may be aware, in 2008, we applied for a pedestrian master planning grant with NCDOT. We received that. We went through the work of that pedestrian master plan in 2009. It's obviously been about a little over 10 years. And so we would like to apply for an update to that master plan, make sure that we're compliant with our revised and updated comprehensive land use plan. We estimate that the net cost to the city, if we're awarded the grant, will be about $4,500 to $5,000. NCDOT pays for 80% of the total project cost. And if we're awarded this planning grant, that'll come out of next year's budget. So we'll just make sure that we include that amount of money in next year's budget. But there is a resolution for that. And then the final item on the consent agenda is approval of a contract with Martin Starnes and Associates for the annual city audit. And that is for audit of the current fiscal year's finances. The total amount for that is $40,125. That'll be split between the city and the Tourism Development Authority because the contract covers both entities. Some of that will be out of this year's budget. Some of that will be out of next year's budget, but we do have money in this year's budget for that. And just as information for you, the School of Government does recommend that you solicit auditing firms about every 5 years or so. And we've used Martin Starnes and Associates for several years, more than 5, and they've done a great job for us. But I did ask Michelle Wood, our finance director, let's go ahead and use Martin Starnes for the current year. And then we'll send out a request for qualifications for auditing firms for next year. Not to say we won't use Martin Starnes again, but we just at least want to get that RFQ out. And just for internal controls and to make sure that things are going well and that we don't have too cozy of a relationship with the auditors, which I think is the concern that the School of Government has. Martin Starnes and Associates does rotate their staff each year. So we have sort of generally speaking, we have the same project manager, but we have different Martin Starnes and Associate auditors that come to City Hall and work with us. We've had a good relationship with them, and we do recommend using them again for the current year's audit, which will get started in May and should wrap up by October. But again, the total cost of that is $40,125. So if you have any questions about the consent agenda items, I'll be happy to answer.
Any questions? Some might have been muted by me, just to tamp down the feedback, but I'll unmute just to see if anyone has any questions about the consent agenda. Any questions?
No.
I don't have any.
Okay. If there are none, then should we proceed straight into the regular meeting?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I assume we don't need to switch recordings or bring in comment sheets. We can just go straight in, correct?
Yes, sir. We go straight into it.
All right. In that case, we will call the April 6th, 2020 regular Belmont City Council meeting to order. Again, just to reiterate what Adrian said earlier, we are meeting via video conference due to the COVID-19 social distancing restrictions. This is Mayor Pro Tem Heffron. I am going to be running the meeting for Mayor Martin due to my familiarity with this software through my day job. Mayor Martin is participating in the meeting. He has called in. So with that being said, we will still have our invocation. I'd ask the mayor to give the invocation. Mayor, you're unmuted. If you would give the invocation, please.
Heavenly Father, thank you for all you do for us. We ask you to keep us safe, please. Keep the coronavirus down to a minimum and get this thing away from us. Help us all make good decisions when it comes to our council. Help us vote on the right things and make good decisions, especially. But mainly, keep us in your thoughts and prayers, dear Lord, to help us out as far as our city goes. And
And I will lead the Pledge of Allegiance, and we actually do have a small flag here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. So next up, we have approval of the consent agenda. Does someone want to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
No motion.
Richard makes that motion. Do we have a second?
Ryan, seconds.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the consent agenda is approved. We will now have public comment, and as we advertised, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, since we're holding this meeting by teleconference, anyone who wanted to participate in the public comment segment of the meeting was advised to email their comments to either the city clerk, Jamie Campbell, or the city manager, Adrian Miller, by 5 o'clock today. All the comments that have been submitted will be read out loud by City Manager Adrian Miller during the conference. And I understand that we have 3 comments from the public that will now be read by our City Manager Adrian Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. The first public comment comes from Kevin and Jennifer Eckert. They don't give their physical address, but I do have their email addresses, and we'll certainly share this with the council. So I will read what they typed. And this was sent this afternoon. Statement to the city. First and foremost, we do not wish to move from our home and or the city of Belmont. We love our home. The floor plan fits our family. We also love the community here, to include all the events that were hosted downtown last year. We applied for the rezoning because in this case, there's no real other option available to us. We are a military family that understand the bigger picture here of holding developers, builders accountable to the city ordinances for the betterment of the entire city. However, having moved 9 times in 10 years and finally finding a place to call home for almost 3 years now is a blessing. We are used to moving and could if the city council deems it necessary in this case. But we will, but there should be another alternative that meets everyone's desire. The issues, concerns for our property specifically are: number 1, the violation was not caught by the site on foundation inspection. Inspection procedures have been changed to prevent this issue from happening again. Number 2, the residences were not notified of the violation by either Essex Homes nor the city when it was reported to the city. Number 3, due to this violation not being reported immediately, we pulled permits to have solar panels installed on our home. When we pulled permits on our property, the city again failed to inform the homeowners of this violation and the potential consequences of the violation, to include the possibility that the home could need to be torn down and rebuilt. Had we known about this, we would not have chosen to do this investment until after this issue was resolved. This has caused substantial investment in our home to be in jeopardy. Furthermore, we feel the city has a major issue with its permitting system if the system cannot or does not alert or prevent the pulling of permits when a property is in violation of another zoning or permitting case that directly affects a home. This makes us as city members unsure of what permitting process is for, other than collecting money for the city. Number 4, we understand the position of the city to hold Essex Homes accountable for their actions and agree with that desire. However, the residents of the Conservancy had an opportunity to have a play park created in their neighborhood and voted it down. So a park would not be something that would be a benefit to the neighborhood, and more specifically to the homeowners affected by Essex actions. Those homeowners would specifically receive some kind of compensation for their emotional distress and loss of property value during this uncertain time. A time frame that is over a year long. Number 5, the statement that the amount of setback violation is not visible concern is not accurate. You will find attached to this email a photo of my property with an F-150 in the driveway. You will see how very close the truck is to the garage and sidewalk. Also attached is a photo of my neighbor's home, which is the elevation floor plan my property was actually surveyed for. It also includes a Dodge Ram pickup truck, and note the amount of space between the tailgate and sidewalk and the front of the truck and garage. Whatever this council decided to do in this case, please note we would like to ask the council to review and make adjustments to the permitting process and notification process so that the homeowner is not making investments in their property while their home is in violation. Thank you, the Edward family. We don't respond to comments, but there's an ongoing case with this. We'll probably come back to you.
She mentioned that there are some pictures attached. I'm assuming that.
And I will send that to the council members. There's a picture of a pickup truck parked in one driveway and a different pickup truck parked in a different driveway. So I did not print those out, but I'll give these to the city council. The second public comment was also received this afternoon from Maria Vargas on behalf of the Lake Ridge HOA Board. Hello, and this was as of 3:19 this afternoon. Hello, I am writing to restate the desire of Lake Ridge. Yes.
Where is that HOA?
This is Lake Ridge.
Where's that located?
It is located on the river down behind, or I guess on east of Amity Acres and Penstowe Forest.
Okay. All right, thank you.
It's across the cove from the wastewater treatment plant and where we're working with the Belmont Rowing Center to build a park.
Okay, thank you.
So Ms. Vargas wrote this afternoon, hello, I am writing to restate the desire of the Lake Ridge Homeowners Association Board to discuss our list of concerns over the proposed Belmont Rowing Center Park. Thank you, Mr. Miller, for previously agreeing to let us speak when the City Council returns to normal sessions. We understood no more action would be taken on this project until we're allowed input. However, today there is machinery clearing the land, including down to the water's edge, facing Lake Ridge Drive, which is supposed to be a buffer zone in the proposed park. Signed, the Lake Ridge HOA Board. So just as information for the council, I did follow up on this, and one of our utility staff was clearing the sewer right of way and the outfall right of way. So that was just normal maintenance and mowing and clearing. So that had nothing to do with the Rolling Center Park. And I let Ms. Vargas and all those that were copied on the email know that. So the final public comment that we received later this afternoon was from Mr. John Ott. And he did provide his address. It is 68 Sierra Street, for the record. Mr. Ott writes, "My name is John Ott, and my address is 68 Sierra Street. I hope the council will vote to raise this building ASAP. This neglected eyesore and health hazard has been a scourge of the residents of North Belmont for many years and is now beyond salvage in my and my neighbor's opinion. About a month ago, a Band-Aid repair attempt was started, but has not been worked on in a few weeks. The virus is not a reason for the stoppage, as only 1 or 2 workers were ever there. Thank you for allowing me to share with you the concerns of the citizens of North Belmont, and I encourage you to bring resolution to this issue." And the subject line was raising Linford Mill. This is the mill that we've got the commercial property code issue with. And provided information on that. And Chris Ray has been working with that property owner who has been in communication with him.
All right. Well, I was going to bring that up in other business. I didn't see it on the agenda, so you know how I feel about that.
Yes.
So, what is going on with that? Really, I mean, do we have a timeline, a schedule?
No, and with everything else going on, I did not follow up with Chris on getting the construction schedule. They have been working on it, and Chris said that the property owner has been in contact with him frequently. So initially there was very little communication between Chris Ray, our code enforcement officer, and the property owner, but that communication has increased now. But we'll certainly provide you with the timeline for the next meeting.
Okay.
I apologize for.
That's all right. I understand that there's a lot of things going on.
Had a few things going on this month.
Yes. All right.
So
Well,
that concludes all the public comments.
Does anyone else have anything to add or weigh in on those comments?
This is the property across from the park.
Yes, sir.
Property
Park.
park.
All right. If there's nothing else, we will move on to the next item of the agenda. And just to sort of set the ground rules for how these next 2 items are going to work, I've talked with Adrian, and when the item is called, I'll turn it over to Adrian to give the presentation. And then just so we're not all talking over each other, at least initially, I'll go down the list and give each council member an opportunity to ask questions or weigh in on the issue in question. Adrian can respond to any questions, and then we'll see if anyone wants to jump in with additional follow-up. Ultimately, we'll call for a motion and a vote. While I am facilitating the meeting, I am still a council member, and so I will be voting on these items, but I would not be anticipating making any motions or seconding. I would ask that other council members be so inclined. So that's sort of the framework for how we're going to proceed. The next item on the agenda is the Catawba Crossing Feasibility Study, request to enter into a multi-jurisdictional memorandum of understanding for shared costs. And we'll recognize Adrian to present this item.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Heffernan. This item comes to us from the Gaston Cleveland Lincoln MPO and City of Gastonia as the lead agency. A little bit of background on this. During the last round of transportation funding through the SPOT 5.0 process, our MPO requested funding for the Catawba Crossings, which is the highway and bridge project that would connect South New Hope Road to South Point Road and to 485 West Boulevard in Mecklenburg County, just south of the Charlotte Douglas International Airport. It's obviously a very expensive project, so the MPO requested that to be a regional tier or even statewide tier project. Because that's a new route, it did not have an existing NCDOT route designation, so it could not qualify as a statewide or regional project. So it had to be scored as a division project. But because of its expense, it did not score well enough to proceed. And NCDOT advised the Gaston Cleveland Lincoln MPO as well as the Charlotte Regional MPO to do a feasibility study to determine if the project is needed, and if it was needed, deemed feasible, then a state route number could be assigned to it. And so so that was probably 2 years ago. So over the last 2 years, we've been working with our partners on the other side of the river and NCDOT on a feasibility study. The MPO staff has taken the lead on that, and they submitted or sent out a request for qualifications for the feasibility study. A committee recommended contracting with Gannett Fleming and their design team on this project. NCDOT did award some planning grant money for this project, and with the state funding for the planning grant as well as the local match, there was approximately $450,000 available to do this study, which is a lot of money, but this is a complex project. And so the initial proposal from Gannett Fleming, which was the preferred consulting team, came in at just over $780,000. So for the last several months, the MPO team has been working with Gannett Fleming to reduce the scope of the feasibility study and reduce the cost. They were able to get the cost down to $498,988, so just under $500,000. And so we had $450,000 to spend, got the price down to just under $500,000. So the rest needs to be made up with additional local match. So initially, so the MPO decided that there would be 4 participating units of local government, which would be Belmont, the town of Cramerton, Gaston County, and the city of Gastonia. And the local share will be broken up based on population. So based on Belmont's population, we were 6.1% of the total population of those 4 units of local government. Our initial match was going to be $1,413. But with this additional cost, our local match has gone up to $4,400. So that's an increase of $2,987. Cramerton, Gastonia, and Gaston County's local match obviously all went up as well, proportionally. So there is a multi-jurisdictional memorandum of understanding included in your agenda packet that begins on page 57 that outlines what each member of this MOU would do. The city of Gastonia, as the lead agent for the MPO, would manage this contract, and our involvement will be as a stakeholder and a member of the steering committee, but also just to pay our local match. And the city of Gastonia will handle all the administration of this project. So if all 4 units of local government agree to this match, then we'll proceed with this MOU and get started on this design project. The goal of which being to have this study finished, and if it does show that the project is warranted, we would submit it for consideration and funding for the next round of projects in spot 7.0. We are currently in 6.0. Then, of course, if the study determines that it's not feasible and not justified, then the project would die. So we need to study it to find out if it's warranted, and if it's warranted, then we would submit it for spot 7.0. So if you have any questions about that, I'll be happy to answer them.
All right, let's see if there are any questions or comments. We'll start with our MPO representative, Richard. Do you have any comments, questions on this item?
No, I know this was a long process. There are multiple players in this, and getting them to agree on this term was one of the items that extended this out. But no, it seems like everybody's in agreement. The cost sharing seems fair, so I would support this.
Okay, thanks, Richard. Ryan, any thoughts or comments?
No. I just wanted to know if Richard had anything to add, but I think he was succinct.
Okay, very good. Mark, thoughts or comments?
I'm just curious. Do we know anything about the sorts of, I guess, the kind of work they have excluded from the scope to get the cost down? I'm just thinking that they cut out $250,000. They're fairly substantial things that I guess are not going to be looked at.
I don't know all the details that were cut out. There was a pretty robust public engagement process in the original contract, and that was pared down to combine several of the public meetings and to do some as electronic meetings. So some of that initial upfront public engagement was pared back. I did express some concerns about that because of the interest in this project, both proponents and opponents of the project. I wanted to make sure that everybody had an opportunity to be heard. And as I learned, generally speaking, in a feasibility study like this, there's not a requirement to have that public engagement. So they're doing this. So any public engagement on this study would be above and beyond what's required. I've had some conversations with the MPO staff, and I'm satisfied that both our residents and the county residents and Cramerton and Gastonia residents and Mecklenburg, anybody that's interested in this project will have an opportunity to make comments. And there's a lot of passion on this project, so I'm sure the word will spread, and there will be plenty of opportunity for folks to provide input on it.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Martha, any questions or comments?
Yeah, just one. In other words, I know if we get into this to a certain extent, we'll have to do an environmental study and that kind of thing again. I know initially there had to be a feasibility study when it was a part of the infamous Garden Parkway project. So are we having to start from square one again with this, or would you consider this an update? I don't know whether the time frame makes a difference or not. That's my only concern.
I don't know the answer to that. I would think that the environmental impact study that was done for the Garden Parkway is several years old.
Right.
And if this new Catawba crossings, if it uses a different alignment or hits the river differently or crosses the river differently and hits the land differently, then I would assume that would trigger a new environmental impact analysis. But I don't know the answer to that.
But the feasibility study part, there's nothing they can use from the prior one for this either, then I'm assuming. Is that what we would think?
I would think so, because the Garden Parkway obviously included this portion, but also
Right.
went west and then north back to I-85 near Bessemer City. Then at one point even hooked north and east to 321 north of Dallas. So this would just be the Catawba Crossings project going from 485 or West Boulevard, 485, South Point Road, and New Hope Road.
All right. Thanks.
Muted myself. Thanks, Martha. Mayor Martin, any questions or concerns?
I think it's very important that we get this thing done, because the traffic, as we know, is getting exponential on South Point Road. And if we have a crossing with opportunities for people to cross into Mecklenburg County to the intermodal hub, especially for trucking, then I think it's very important that we support this.
Okay, thank you. I just had a couple questions. The agenda memo said had a cost of $498,988. The draft contract said $512,489. What was the difference in the figures there? Or maybe I'm misunderstanding what the figures were.
I'm not sure why the discrepancy. But our local match is $4,400.
Okay.
According to the MPO.
My only other thought was, and I know this was a brainchild of our MPO, but I would hope depending on funding and what comes down, that is there any chance of Mecklenburg or Charlotte providing funding? It seems like they would get some benefit from this as well. I don't know how all that works, but that thought did strike me because it seems like, this is going to help them as well.
I'm sure that if this project is deemed feasible and moves forward, then it's going to require financial support from locals as well as maybe some private landowners in terms of right-of-way dedication. So certainly, Gaston County can't afford to do the whole project. Working with NCDOT, we will need partners on the east side of the river.
Okay. Anyone else have any further questions or comments for Adrian regarding this item?
No.
All right. If that's the case, we'll entertain a motion regarding approval of this feasibility study and our proportionate share.
Jim, I'll make that motion.
All right. Richard has moved to approve the memorandum of understanding for shared costs. Councilwoman Stowe has seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the measure passes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, we will move into the next agenda item, which is consider approval of a design services consulting proposal with CPL for the Belmont Recreation Center. And we'll recognize City Manager Adrian Miller to present this topic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. So one of the priorities of the Parks and Recreation staff, the Parks and Recreation Citizen Advisory Board, and the Belmont City Council has been the construction of a recreation center. It's been talked about for probably 20 years. It's been on our CIP list for many years, and we are now in a position to proceed with construction of that facility if the council deems it a priority for you moving forward. So this is in our 5-year CIP. It's funding for the recreation centers included in our 5-year budget. And so step one of building a recreation center is designing a recreation center. And just as a little bit of background, staff about a year or two ago was looking at locations for a recreation center. The cost of purchasing land is obviously has gone up in Belmont. And so we were looking at city-owned property, and we determined that the best location for a recreation center would be basically in the front yard of our Public Works building which is 1401 East Catawba Street, across the street from the Kevin Lofton Riverfront Park. Being across the street from the Riverfront Park would have a natural tie-in for recreation. Being in the front yard of our Public Works building would help screen that building, which is sort of utilitarian, with a nicer looking building. It also has the advantage of being able to share the new parking lot for the Public Works building. So part of the Public Works building, which will be the City Works building, will have a 100 space parking lot that we would utilize during normal business hours, Monday through Friday, and the recreation center could utilize during the evenings and on weekends when they have practices and games or tournaments. It'd still be parking for the recreation center, but they could share this other lot. So the staff and the Parks and Rec Board would like to have the recreation center built at that location, and we've explained it to the council, and the city council has been agreeable to that. So that brings us to needing to hire a design firm and architectural and engineering firm to do this work. Our Parks and Recreation staff sent out a request for qualifications in January. They received 4 proposals back, 4 sets of qualifications from different firms, and submitted those to the Parks and Recreation Citizen Advisory Board. The board held interviews back on March the 11th. We were still meeting in public. So they met together. They had interviews with all 4 firms. And then the following week, March the 18th, the Recreation Advisory Board held a teleconference meeting to discuss those 4 firms and to make a decision on which one to recommend to you. And they recommended CPL Architecture, Engineering, and Planning firm to do this. That was the consensus of that board and of the staff. They were the top choice to do that. And so per state law, we asked for qualifications. We couldn't consider the cost of doing the work. We just looked at what is the most qualified firm to do the work. And so the board and the staff all were in agreement that CPL was the top choice. So then we asked CPL to submit a proposal to have the cost in there. The cost for them to do all of the design work, the public engagement, the bidding, the contracting, the permitting, and the construction administration. So it's a turnkey service for them, for us, from them, is $719,500, which is roughly 7 to 7.5% of the total construction budget, which is in line with what you would expect to pay a design firm, between about 7 and 10%, depending on how complex the project is. So that of that, we budgeted about $60,000 in this year's budget so that we could get started. We wouldn't have to wait till July to begin this project. So if you want to proceed with the project and hire CPL, accept their proposal, we do have money in this year's budget to begin that work. And of course, we would budget the rest of that in next year's budget. And I'm working on next year's budget now, and we'll put the balance in there. We'll probably end up doing a project ordinance because this will be a multi-year project. But we anticipate, particularly in light of what's happening now with the economy, we want to get this project done quickly. We want to get it designed, permitted, and under construction quickly. So hopefully by the end of this calendar year, we'll be able to get it permitted and bid out so that we can then get financing for it and be under construction next year. Because I think there'll be a lot of people this will put a lot of people to work on construction jobs. Pricing should be pretty favorable. Certainly interest rates will be favorable to get this project going, hopefully by this time next year. But as I said, we can't construct the project until we design the project. So I've submitted the proposal from CPL that you can find beginning on page 67 of your agenda packets. And I had previously sent you a copy of their responses to the RFQ in my weekly email to you. So I was not at the interview, so I can't speak to what was discussed in the interview, but the rec board and the rec staff all recommended CPL. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you, Adrian. Let's start with our former member of the Parks and Rec Board, Mark. Any comments or questions?
Just that I know this is a project that the Parks and Rec Board's been working on for a while. So very excited to kind of see us at this point in the process where we can actually finally start working on it. It looks like a good proposal. I don't really have any much to say about what's been submitted. I am in support of what is before us.
Thank you. Martha.
No questions.
Okay. Mayor Martin, any thoughts or questions?
I think this is a great idea, a great location for our Parks and Recreation Center, and I think we need to proceed with doing this.
All right. Thank you. Richard, questions or comments?
No questions. I think the Park and Rec Board did a good job with interviewing and vetting these. The company made a good proposal. It looks like they've got a lot of experience in this, so I'm glad to see this moving forward. I support their selection.
Thank you. Ryan.
Yeah, I think probably anybody that's been with me over the last couple of years knows this isn't a top priority for me from a city level, but I do understand the need, and I also understand there's a lot of support, especially from council and Parks and Rec Board. So I think rather than obstructing something, I'd like to just try and make it the best project possible. So support it.
Thank you. I'll just say that I did attend the Parks and Rec Board meeting when they interviewed the 4 bidders, and they were all strong candidates. But if I had to have picked one, I would have picked CPL So I wholeheartedly agree with the Parks and Rec Board's decision, and I thank them for their work on that. I think it's really a good proposal. I will say a couple things that stood out for me was their commitment to community engagement. Regarding input on the design for this facility. And of course, obviously, in our current circumstances, they'll have to be creative in terms of how that engagement might take place. But I have every confidence that they'll think of some good things to do. And in some respects, if people need something to do, perhaps they could weigh in on that. It'll give us people something to do. They also provided a lot of detailed information on how to keep the project on track and save money. So I thought that was something that they really honed in on and had addressed perhaps in more detail than some of the other applicants. I was hoping, Adrian, if you could explain one thing. I know we talked about it before, but the construction manager at risk part of the proposal, because I think that's going to be beneficial to us as well. So if you could just mention that.
Sure. So briefly, what our conventional approach has been with construction projects is we send it out to bid. We get the lowest responsible bidder. We have a contingency, and we go with the lowest responsible bidder. Then the risk is that you have change orders that then drives up the price. With the construction manager at risk process that we would like to use, we would get a guaranteed maximum price. And so we're currently looking at about $9.5 million construction for this project. And the design firms, if you choose CPL, would work with the construction bidders and get that guaranteed maximum price. And that way, no matter what happens, under normal circumstances, you would not have the change orders. If the bidders miss something, or if something were to go wrong, they would have to eat any extra cost. So it would not be the city having to do change orders. So there's an incentive there for the contractor to get an honest price on the front end and to stick with it, and not try to get change orders to jack up the price of the project. So there's a lot more coordination between the design firm and the contractor, sort of as you finish up the design and begin that bidding process. Jim, you're muted.
I muted myself. Thanks, Adrian. I keep forgetting that. Does anyone else have any further questions or comments on this proposal?
And Jim, if I could just add, I included the proposal, but there is a very long, detailed contract that they submitted to us as a standard AIA contract. So the action I would like for the council to consider tonight is to accept the proposal and to authorize the manager to sign the contract, or the mayor to sign the contract after Parks has finished his review of that contract document.
Okay, do we have a motion along those lines?
So
I'll make
moved.
a motion.
All right, Mark has made the motion. Is that a second by Martha?
Yes, it is.
All right. We have a motion made and seconded to accept this proposal, instruct the city manager or mayor to sign the contract after the city attorney has reviewed it. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, that was the last item on our relatively short regular agenda. We now have reports. Again, City Manager Miller.
Thank you. So because of the COVID-19 crisis, the only board that met this month is the Parks and Recreation Board. I do not have the minutes from their March 11th meeting, so I'll put that on the next City Council agenda. But you do have the minutes from their March 18th meeting, which is the one where they discussed the teleconference meeting where they discussed which firm. So that is just background information for you. Then under the manager's report, I normally give you a list of all the fun and exciting events that are upcoming for this month, but unfortunately, they've all been canceled or postponed. So we will have fun on our own, 6 feet away from other people this month. Just an update on the COVID-19. Obviously, so at the time that we did the council agenda, Gaston County had issued a stay-at-home order. But since then, the governor has also done that, obviously. So we're working with both the county and the state on enforcing those stay-at-home orders, the social distancing. We've closed our city parks out of abundance of caution to make sure that people can't, because the weather's beautiful, and we saw people gathering in the parks. The number of people gathering has been tightened down by the governor's stay-at-home order, so we just wanted to close the parks. Our staff has been working remotely to the extent possible, and those that can't work remotely that are coming to the office and working out in the field are socially distancing as much as is feasible for them. We particularly on the street and parks maintenance staff, we've had them scattered about the parks and the streets, so they have a little bit more freedom to be apart. We are working to ensure that we can have face masks or some sort of cloth covering for all of our employees, starting with our first responders, the frontline folks, with the police, the fire, and the public works department, because they're out and about and they have public interaction. For the most part, the public works staff, they can pull back from public engagement, but the police and the fire department certainly cannot. And oftentimes when the police department staff are interacting with the public is not on their best behavior. And so we want to mitigate the risk of contracting the virus as much as we can. So we've issued PPE to the police department. We'll be issuing them scarf or masks this week. So don't be alarmed if you see our police officers or firefighters or public works staff, or really any of our staff wearing masks. That is a recommendation of the CDC, and we certainly want to do that to model that good behavior and to keep our staff safe and to keep our public safe. So any questions on what we're doing in terms of the COVID-19?
I will mention one thing, Adrian. I got several calls over the weekend in regards to the number of people that were down at Lowe's. I know Walmart has imposed a visitation rule for their store, but Lowe's, my understanding, was packed with people. And is there anything, and I know it's not in our jurisdiction, but it really is reliable for the store owner to go ahead and do something on behalf of protecting the people? Because the people said it was wall-to-wall people in those stores. And great situation as far as that goes in the virus on. If we have that thing passed on in this community here, that's going to make it real tough.
Yes, sir, Mayor. I was at Lowe's 2 weeks ago, and it was packed, and it was a little uncomfortable. So I don't know about this weekend, but the weather was nice. I'm sure folks were out in the garden center and everybody's stuck at homes. They were probably doing home projects and garden projects. The governor's order and the county order deems hardware stores as essential businesses, so they're allowed to operate. It's up to the management of the store on how they're going to comply with the social distancing, the 6 feet rule. I believe some stores, maybe even Walmart, has now instituted a line that you have to wait in line outside 6 feet apart and then go in kind of one in, one out. But that's outside of our jurisdiction to regulate how the stores comply with that rule. If we do see, a mass congregation of people close together, I mean, we could, our police department could ask them to separate out and get that 6 feet of separation. But if it's an essential business, then they're allowed to operate, and we just hope that people will use common sense and follow the distancing guidelines and maybe wear a mask if you go to a store, whether it be Lowe's or Walmart or Harris Teeter or all these, whatever store is open and is big enough that you can have more than 10 people in that store.
Could Adrian, it's Ryan. Could we just write a letter to the manager of the store suggesting that they take more precautions?
Yeah, we can certainly suggest that, but we can't require them. But yeah, it would certainly would not
Seems
hurt
like
to.
better than doing
The old strongly worded letter.
Yes, we'll give them a strongly worded letter.
I hate to say nothing. So
Right.
maybe just write a letter that's been brought to our attention and we ask them to do it. If they don't, then they don't. But if we do nothing,
It's a safety thing.
Right, it certainly
we
is.
can't count on common sense. So maybe we need to write a letter.
I would agree with that.
Anyone else have any questions for Adrian regarding his report?
I'm not quite finished. I just
Oh, I'm
wanted to
sorry.
call back to COVID-19.
Sorry. Sorry.
That's quite all right. I've been speaking a lot tonight. And I'm sorry you didn't get to hear presentations from the staff, but trying out this video conference, I just wanted to keep it as small as possible. You know, in the midst of everything, the work of the city goes on. So we are working on the budget for the upcoming year. We'd like to schedule a workshop for the budget. You've already got a workshop scheduled for April the 20th. We'll see if we want to do a budget workshop or capital improvements program workshop that afternoon at 4 o'clock. I believe is when we scheduled the workshops. We would obviously need to do that remotely like we're doing this. But I do want to get started on that budget discussions with you. And then I do get some information that it sounds like Lowe's has regulated its one in, one out, or its policy on how it's managing crowds in its stores. So we'll verify that, and if they haven't, then we'll certainly send them a strongly worded letter. And if they have, then we will thank them for taking responsibility for the safety of their employees and the public.
Good.
The last item I have for you, I sent you an email earlier today, and I had notified you in my weekly reports several weeks back. We have had a request to purchase some city-owned property, a portion of our parking lot at the intersection of South Main Street and Myrtle Street. This is the property that we lease to 111 Investments, and it's being used as an outdoor patio with a Two Chicks sandwich and ice cream shop. So the adjacent property owner would like to purchase that and make improvements to that so that it would be a year-round outdoor space. And they've offered $75,000 for the purchase of that city property. The general statutes regulate how we sell or dispose of public property. So the process would be, we have now received this proposal. You can choose to ignore it and say we don't want to sell the property, or you can say we may be interested in selling this property, but we can't just sell it directly to a buyer. We have to then, if you accept the offer, we then do a public notice in the newspaper and provide anybody in the public 10 days to do an upset bid. So there's a formula in the general statutes as to how much you have to raise that bid. So we have an initial offer of $75,000. So there would have to be an offer higher than that from somebody else. If we receive a higher offer, and we publish another advertisement and give another 10 days to get another offer. And so we just keep going until you have basically a highest bid for that purchase. Once we reach the time of getting that highest bid, we would then take it back to you, and you have the option to accept that bid or reject the bid or change your mind and say, no, we're not interested in selling the project. So my practice has been whenever we get a request to buy city property, I bring it to you and get your direction on how you want to proceed with that.
All right. Any thoughts from anyone?
I have one question. The property adjacent to that is supposed to be, there's supposed to be an office building built. Is this the same property owner that owns this piece that would be doing that?
No, ma'am. It would be a different. So the folks that want to do the office building and parking area would be a separate entity.
Any other questions?
I have a few. Yeah, I'm looking at Exhibit B, where it's got the parcel highlighted.
Yes,
And
sir.
does it include the parking lot next to the building?
It includes a portion of it. So it would be if you're familiar with where the outdoor patio is and those
Right.
tables up there, there's a one parking space and then a handicap parking space and the access aisle. So those three parkings, or those two parking spaces in the access aisle would be included in the purchase request. And that would allow that property owner to expand the building at some point in the future.
Okay. So would we retain the rest of that parking lot, or do we not own that lot?
We do own it. We would retain the rest of it.
Okay.
Now, the office project that Councilwoman Stowe just referenced has talked to us about purchasing that portion and relocating our parking and expanding the public parking. But that's a discussion that we'll have later this year as part of a potential conditional rezoning process. So I want to make sure that what the item before you tonight doesn't impact what may be coming to you later this year through that office project, and that the office project doesn't harm the current tenants and the current property owners, and that at the end of the day, the city ends up with desirable development downtown as well as public parking.
Okay. My other, I guess it's really more of an observation. And I know that like tax values aren't everything, whatever, but it looks like that the tax value of this parcel is 91,000, and they're offering 75. So I guess my inclination would probably be, I'm not necessarily opposed to selling the parcel, but I might want to try to get a little bit more for it, unless there's some justification for the 75. That's just my thoughts.
And if you would like more information or want to defer any kind of consideration until the April 20th workshop, we can certainly do that. I know we've been talking about this a little bit on some of our weekly reports, but we did just get the offer in. So if you can choose to proceed and say let's at least run through the process, and again, there's no commitment on your end at the end of the process to sell it, or you could say we just don't want to sell at all, or you could say let's just talk about this at the workshop when you've got a little bit more time to think about it.
I would, this is Ryan, I'd be in favor of maybe talking about it at the workshop in more detail. Was there an independent appraisal done on this property?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, so kind of to Mark's point, I mean, I don't know what it's worth, but I'm assuming that nobody on this call knows for sure. So that might be something we want to discuss, is what it's actually worth. I would hate to start an open bidding process with a low bid. Would be kind of like, if we can start at 91, I'd rather do that in case there is an upset bid on it. But I mean, I'm not a real estate professional, but we know there's a few around who do appraisals. So I'd probably want to see an appraisal done, and then I'd rather probably talk about this in a work session. I'd like to see, are there plans submitted for the office building?
There was a sort of a concept plan, but nothing formalized.
I mean, would this property be more beneficial to roll in with that project for the city?
This particular piece of property would not be impacted by the other project.
And is this kind of what I mean, you came from the planning department. Is this what we want for like a Main Street fronting property, or would we prefer to have, a brick building there? I know it's narrow, but is this something that you think is the best use for it? Is expanding of the restaurant or whatever?
Well, certainly another brick and mortar store is going to have a higher tax base for the city. But I think that when you have some outdoor spaces that can be activated, it also helps with the street life and just the activity downtown. So a good combination of stores and sort of some patios and outdoor areas like we've seen in some of the restaurants downtown. It just further activates the street. So I think you're looking at good choices. It's not like there's a downside to any of it. There's always trade-offs, but it's not like you've got a great option and a terrible option. They're both good options.
Okay. Well, I'm not opposed to it, but I think I would like a little bit more time with it. But that's just,
I concur with Mark and Ryan in terms of deferring it to the workshop and having some more time to think things over. Martha and Richard, do you have any thoughts on this?
I agree with you.
Yeah, I'm fine with the workshop scenario.
Okay, that's only 2 weeks away.
Yeah. Do we need a motion, or is that just directive?
No.
And
Just direction to me.
okay,
I kind of like the idea of getting. Oh, sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I kind of like the idea of that Ryan suggested having getting our own appraisal done of the property. I don't know if it's possible to get done in 2 weeks or not, but I would kind of like to see something like that at some point.
Parks, you're muted.
Oh, Parks.
All right, just for clarification, the way I'm reading the tax information, the whole lot, which is sort of a hatchet-shaped lot, is valued at $91,440, and they're only wanting to buy less than half of that, just the front, that part on South Main. It still leaves the bulk of that, the way I look at this. But getting an appraisal is not a bad idea. Just that 91 includes more property than what they do.
okay.
You see it, Councilman Cylinder, you see that, that picture, it looks like a hatchet shape.
Yeah,
parcel.
yeah.
Yeah, they just want to buy, that's the whole parcel's valued at 91.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so just the part adjacent to the existing building there is what they're wanting to buy, which
Okay.
is a good bit. It's
Okay.
less than half. Just clarify.
Thank you, Parks. I mean, I still think I'm still comfortable deferring it and getting an independent or considering an independent appraisal. I don't know what everyone else thinks.
I'm fine with that.
I'm in favor of deferring it to the meeting on the 20th. I think that would be the smart thing to do.
Okay. Parks, I'm assuming that appraisers are still able to work.
So far,
Okay.
they're not quick. They're not quick.
Yeah,
Get the feedback from somebody.
I think it was Parks. Anything else, Parks? Okay.
Mute me again.
Okay. All right. So I guess the directive stands to defer this until April 20th in our workshop.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
That's all that I have.
Thank you. That concluding the reports, we now go to other business. Let's start with the mayor.
I just want to thank everybody for participating in this call that we have. It's a little bit unusual, but we have to do because of the coronavirus and the 6-foot rules. So I think it's a great idea that we've done this, and I appreciate you, Jim, for taking charge of this thing and running the meeting for us. It's very talented on your part to do that. We appreciate that very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Richard, other business.
Well, 2 items. One of them, someone had asked me if we might consider increasing our bulk item pickup during this period. As I said, the local Goodwills and some other facilities were closed, so we may experience some more curbside items showing up, and didn't know if anyone else had heard anything about that, but I can see a scenario where that might actually play out. Second thing, I'd like to thank Councilman Schrift for his suggestions on our loan program. I thought that put a little bit of a finer point on the process, and I appreciate that. That's all I have.
Thank you, Richard. Ryan.
I was in my garage today and was thinking the same thing about bulk pickup. So I mean, I don't know the process for that, but if everybody's at home cleaning out everything, it might be a good time to announce an extra one. And I mean, if it can't happen, then fine. But I think Richard is probably hearing from, just people living their lives in their garage and doing stuff around the house. So that makes a lot of sense to me. On the loan program, I wanted to, is there an update on that, Adrian? How's it going?
Yes, and so my laptop is running out of power, so you may lose me here in a few minutes. It was 100% at the beginning of the meeting, and now it's at 9. We do have a bulk item pickup scheduled for the last week of April, so if you can just hang in there for a couple more weeks, we'll get that last week of April. We have received 7 completed applications for the loan program. We've got over 50 businesses that have inquired on that, so it's going well so far. And just for the record, for the bulk item, we don't limit the amount of stuff you can pick out. So you can empty your entire garage and put it on the street there the week of the 26th.
Working on it.
Just don't put it out too early.
Anything else, Ryan?
No, just I hope everybody's staying healthy, keeping a optimistic attitude. It's time, and we'll get through this too, just like everything else.
All right, thank you. Mark.
I'll just, I know we kind of already talked about this, but I've got a couple phone calls about that commercial property code enforcement issue up in North Belmont. So I know that's something that people up there are very interested in. Also, just want to thank everybody for all the teamwork that made the loan program possible. I don't know if anybody read the article that Adrian sent over from the Charlotte Observer, but I thought it was kind of interesting that the Charlotte Observer was basically chastising the Charlotte City Council and telling them to be more like us.
Yes.
So I'll admit that I got a little. I thought that was funny. So I think that's a good sign, and that we're moving in the right direction. And I'm glad to hear that we've already got 7 applications in. I think that's good progress.
All right, thank you, Martha.
Yes, first of all, thanks to all the council because, and thank you to Ryan as well for making sure we have a good application process. Evidently, the small business loan process, I have a friend who's applying for that, put all the information together on Friday, was in a totally different package this morning to use and to do. So evidently there's a lot of glitches in the program that we're not aware of on that end. So I'm happy that ours is well organized. So that's very good. I need to correct a couple of things. Our last meeting that we had, since it was audio only, if you'll recall, I addressed the situation with the rowing club and said that and I meant we as a council and staff, and was explaining to the new council members the history of some of what had happened and that we were fine with it, meaning the council and the staff. The homeowners association board evidently interpreted what I said when I said we to mean that we, the neighborhood, did this. We're all in favor of this. And what happened was the homeowners association board wrote the letter. The homeowners association group did not meet until about a week ago. And so they had a meeting similar to what we're having tonight. What I think happened was that a real estate agent told someone something to indicate that the rowing club would cause a possible devaluing of the properties here. And so I don't know which real estate agent that was, and I don't think any of us would think it's going to cause the property values to lower. Certainly, I would not want my own property value to be lower. The concerns that they had were with regard to lighting, so that you wouldn't have lighting like you have in a parking lot for a grocery store, or Lowe's or Walmart. They wanted screening and And they were also concerned about noise and possible of alcohol. And of course, these are athletes. That's not what they do. So there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I tried to help address it and offered to come to our staff with any questions that they had. I think, unfortunately, the groups is under the impression that they can come to us and have a special meeting or something. And I tried to explain to them that in public comment, all we do is listen and then take that, under consideration when we are looking at decision making. So I'm working with them. I've not yet received a list, and it may be that they don't want me to be the representative since they were not pleased, I guess, with me to begin with. But I think one thing I need to remind the council, across from where I am, we're looking at an 80-foot buffer, and the trees will not be removed. Where Ms. Vargas lives at the other end of the cove, we're looking at a 300-foot buffer. Any other development that you would have on that peninsula is not going to offer what that is. So I think as long as we can address the screening, lighting, and that kind of thing, I would hope that the council can satisfy their request. But once again, I've not received a list. I'm still hoping to do that. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you, Martha. Just a few things. Most of what I wanted to address has already been addressed. You know how I feel about that Cason Street property, and I echo what Mark and others have said. I understand there's a lot of other things going on, but I was tired of the constant games we were playing with that last month, and I'm still tired of it. So hopefully we can get that resolved sooner rather than later. I want to thank again Mark for coming up with the idea for the emergency loan program and getting in touch with Adrian about it, and thank Ryan for his helpful suggestions about the application process. I think that's a really good thing that we're doing, and to show our support for our local businesses. I wanted to, the dialogue with the rowing center. I'm hopeful that whatever form it takes, it can lead to something like we had with the satellite garage, where once we got all the information out, everyone was able to get on the same page. Advisory board interviews, I think you mentioned we did some of those, and I don't know what we're going to do with that, whether we're going to finish the other ones remotely. I suppose it's not too urgent because, as I understand it, most advisory boards are not meeting now anyway. And then, we'll see how things play out. I'm hopeful that, I think we'll be meeting like this again in May, but maybe by June we'll be having a live meeting in some form or fashion. But we'll just see. What everyone finds information from different places. I like this site healthdata.org from the University of Washington, that they run models, and it's just information, nobody's interpretation of them, of that information. And so that's sort of what I've been looking at, and based on their modeling, I'm somewhat hopeful that we might be able to meet in person in June, but that's only my personal opinion. So that's all I have. Thanks everyone for getting together and working through this in unusual circumstances. That's it. Any last thoughts, Adrian?
No, thank you all for agreeing to meet with this unusual setup, and I think it was a good first effort with it, and appreciate all the discussion tonight. Y'all be safe and wash your hands.
Thank you. With that, I will make sure everyone is unmuted. If there's nothing else, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Ryan has moved. Is that a second, Richard?
Yeah, a second.
All right, moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, we are now adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
See you
you.
soon.
Be safe.
Thanks, you too.